director of FDEM did say that FDEM does not have the 287G authority to, that is, they are not designated to manage this facility on behalf of the federal government. And it is, we were not able to get clarity on whose 287G authority this facility is being run. And just to add to the two, the director referred to those being detained as inmates. Sure. Representative Anavias Kamani from the Orlando area, State House Rep. So different terminology was used to describe those who are being detained right now. So staff referred to them as residents. They wouldn't use the term inmate or detainee, but then the director multiple times referred to folks as inmates and detainees. So there continues to be, to Congressman Frost's point, just vagueness of what this operation actually is, who's in charge, and referring to prison standards. Yes, they kept referring to prison standards as well. Every time we asked a question about the environment, they said these are federal and state prison standards, federal and state prison standards. So it's like, okay, is this a correctional institution? There are FDC staff also working here. It's worth noting that there were staff from the Florida Department of Corrections here. I think it really needs to be made clear that this facility exists just for purposes of it being a stunt. Right. This is for show. This is DeSantis and Trump chest beating, and Utmeyer chest beating, to try to make sure that they can send a message that they are the biggest, baddest, nastiest overseers. Because that's what's going on here. This harkens back to when you had people who were encaged, who were imprisoned. I mean, I just think it's important to underscore, when I have been through other ICE facilities, the detainees are not in cages. And there is a temporary structure on the grounds of Chrome Detention Center that I just went to see. And they told me that the reason they're in cages is because it's a temporary facility. But there's a temporary tent on the grounds of Chrome, and those detainees are not in a cage. They freely walk around. Their beds are out in the open. They're able to move back and forth between buildings. They are full of it.
Just one other thing I want to say, too, that I think is really important to paint this picture. When they let us in to see the cages, and we saw people, of course, yelling for help, we even heard in the background someone yell, "I'm an American citizen." They started chanting libertad, freedom, liberty. And I got to tell you, it was very emotional to be there for all of us, to hear that, and to see that our taxpayer money is being used for this stunt. We asked them about a hurricane plan. Of course, the plan is to get people out, and they know that the first, and it doesn't even have to be a hurricane, the first real storm that comes by here, all that money that's been used to build this will completely go to waste. So this has nothing to do with what they tell you it is, and it's all a cruel stunt. Cruelty isn't just the point, it's the strategy in this.
They tried to evacuate them even for Camp 1 earlier this week that people are going to call this a modern-day concentration camp. Would you agree with that statement?
Listen, it is as bad as it can be, but it is not a concentration camp. And people should not use Holocaust references to describe what's going on behind us.
And did you guys notice the bug infestation at all?
Well, you're noticing it. It is no different in there.
And there were bugs when we went into the empty dorm that has not yet been finished. There were bugs on the mattresses, all over the mattresses that had not even yet been used in an air-conditioned tent. So, I mean, there's also, when we walked through, there were the largest grasshoppers I've ever seen in my life. There were the largest grasshoppers I've ever seen in my life, hopping along around this facility. I mean, this is literally plopped down in the middle of a swamp. I also, since we were able to hear some of the people screaming, another man screamed out that he was poisoned by Clorox in the water, and he was in the hospital for 4 days. Now, we were told that there was no one who was ever hospitalized overnight, so maybe he was referring to the medical clinic here, but I mean, there are really disturbing, vile conditions, and this place needs to be shut the hell down. It needs to be shut down. They want to open up look, If they open up a different facility in a more appropriate place, like if they opened up at Homestead Airport, where they could establish much more habitable conditions, that's a different story. This place is a stunt, and they're abusing human beings here, and it's an outrage.
Can I make really quick? And I just want to debunk one thing. My colleagues, and I think for our federal partners, but this idea that the worst of the worst is inside the facility is not true.
Yeah.
They are separating them based off of wristbands, based off of orange, yellow, and red. And individuals with small infractions are inside this facility. Civil traffic infractions, suspended license are in there. So the idea that the worst of the worst is in there is not true.
So adding to that point, I'll just add, the only people we saw there were Hispanic-looking males. That's all we saw there. All Hispanic-looking adult males, including those with no criminal infractions at the lowest level. There was one person who was on medical isolation. We couldn't get details about that. I was trying to figure out if it's a public health emergency or a public health concern that puts them in isolation, and we don't know how many people have been put in medical isolation to this point.
State Senator Blaise Godley just came out before you guys and said that conditions were fine, the beds were comfortable, the food was great. It painted a very rosy picture. Your response to that?
Unfortunately, my colleagues, that's because they take this as a game, and that's how they have been operating in there, right? So what we just saw is not a game, especially as the congressman just made mention of, that while we were in there, at one point it was clocked at about 81 degrees in a particular spot. And I know for a fact if you continue to go in, it is even hotter.
Right. It was 83.
83 degrees.
Yes.
83 degrees.
And just to read a statement from the wife of a detainee regarding this scheduled tour from his pastor to me yesterday. His wife says they allowed them to take a shower and gave them new clothes, and the food all of a sudden is better. I wonder how long that's going to last after your visit.
And also I want to point out that I don't really want to debate the conditions. My name is Representative Rita Harris, House District 44. We don't need to debate the conditions. The fact is there are people there that most likely do not belong there, and that is enough. Thank you.
Make sure you tell me your name.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So that decision will be made by, obviously, the Director of Emergency Management when to pull that trigger. But he said that there were evacuation plans in place, and most likely what they would do is they would get the people out, they would decompress this facility, and then move them to facilities they've already transferred them out of to bring them here.
Like the county jail.
He better have a lot of time.
Okay, last question. One last one.
I can make it.
How long was your tour?
Yeah. The question about hearings, as a member of the House Oversight Committee, I can tell you after this, I have many phone calls planned with my colleagues to talk about possibly coming down here, possibly holding ad hoc hearings about this facility, and not just facility. This is indicative of a greater problem too across this country. The dehumanizing immigrants, dehumanizing people who are in this country, people who've been in this country, many of whom over a decade, people like my mother who came here as a refugee from Cuba. You know, when I was in that facility looking at those cages, I saw young men who looked exactly like me. I saw myself in those cages. And so there will be hearings and there will be accountability on this at the federal level, and of course I know our state partners are going to work on it as well.
The difference in the impression between the Republican legislators and ours tells you all you need to know about the difference in the regard for human life and human beings between people who elect Democrats and people who elect Republicans. We all here clearly ran for different reasons than our friends on the other side of the aisle. We ran to help make people's lives better, and they ran to serve their MAGA master and remain in power. And you know, like every single day, I know we all will continue to fight to make all humans' lives better, and that's what our fight against these kinds of conditions in detention facilities are all about. I'll say just lastly, I think every single one of us here would agree that if you are a criminal and you're an undocumented immigrant,
That's right.
you should be deported.
That's right.
Criminals should not be able to remain as long as they have due process, and they've been detained under our laws. Criminals don't belong in this country, but the problem is Yes, with due process, exactly. But that's not occurring here, and the rule of law has to be followed. And that's the difference between the impression you were given by the Republican legislators who walked up to this podium before we got here and ours. Thank you all very much.